Hi, I'm going to do a video today on bullying. Not a particularly nice subject, and if you are on the recipient's end of a bully, it's pretty horrible. So that's why we're going to do a video on it. This is going to be equally valid for school bullying, for being bullied at university, being bullied in the office, domestic bullying. It's completely valid, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you what's going on in the mind of the bully. I'm going to explain to you what the healing mechanisms are of the mind, so that you can start to understand what is going on in the head of the bully. And then I'm going to give you a few tools and tips as to how to deal with it. Okay, let's start with a basic premise. Okay, this might sound a little bit controversial, depending upon your perspective, depending upon your experiences, but grant me the possibility that your mind is a self-healing mechanism. Okay, we all know our body is a self-healing mechanism, right? You cut yourself, you start to bleed, the blood gets the membrane, which stops bleeding, solidifies, get the scab, you heal underneath, scab falls off, you're back to normal. Okay, consider the possibility that your brain is exactly the same. Okay, you may just be able to take that, but it might take a little bit of swallowing. If that's the case, all right, but have an open mind. Okay, this is the way that your brain heals. The best way that the brain heals is that you express, that you enunciate your experience. Especially if you can do that with someone who you trust, someone who's not a shame-based person, someone who you feel safe expressing this to, getting a second person's perspective on your issue. When you can express, okay, the opposite of depression is expression, right? Rather than repressing feelings, you express feelings and release them. When you express your feelings and they're understood, it's the best way of integrating, because what happens is you order your memory correctly. When you suffer a trauma and it's not processed, your trauma is everywhere. It's in the past, it's in the present, it's in the future. It's just randomly triggered, and it comes and it's everywhere. Okay? When you express and you are understood and you integrate what is happening, then the experiences that you had live in the past. Okay? It's like ordering your memory correctly. So suddenly your present experience isn't polluted with that, and your future isn't processed based upon the fear of this random thing. So that's a very important way of healing. Okay? But a lot of things we try to avoid. We don't want to express. And probably the most important of those is anything which is shame-based. Because by definition, shame is very personally vulnerable. It says, I am wrong. It can often be on taboo subjects or things that we think are so taboo, so unforgivable, that we dare not speak their name. Okay? That's why they have such power over us. So if you find yourself in that kind of a situation, okay, you have suffered something or other in the past which you came to the conclusion was your fault somehow or other, and that you are faulty, and that you then learn coping mechanisms to avoid like the plague, then this is just hurting and hurting. It's hurting in your mind all the time. So you can't go through that natural integrating process, right? You can't place that experience in the past where it belongs. It's just everywhere. So what do? Right? This is why I say that your brain is a self-healing mechanism. When you will not express, enunciate, process consciously, your body finds ways, or your mind finds ways, to act out your experiences, almost as if you were the perpetrator, in order that you can put yourself in the shoes of the person that did whatever they did, so that you can start to understand what on earth was going on and start to almost by accident, process it consciously. Yeah. So this is what's going on with a bully, okay? The bully has a sense of shame, right? They feel intrinsically bad or wrong or faulty, okay? They've learned from some experiences in the past that they are either partly or wholly taboo or unforgivable or bad, yeah? And it's so uncomfortable that they dare not speak its name, they dare not mentally process what's going on, and so they're finding ways to act that out subconsciously, okay? We're not saying that this is all a thoughtful process. This is just occurring because it's part of our healing mechanism. We try to relive the experiences of pain in order that we can understand them, in order that we can put them in the past, right? But unfortunately, the way that a bully is going to do that is they are going to reenact their pain as if they were the perpetrator in order that they can understand what was going on and heal themselves. And you, if you're suffering a bully, well, you're the unwitting victim. Okay, so what they're doing is a need-based action. There's a reason for it. There's a solution that they're looking for. This is all in the back of their mind, okay? This is not at the front of their mind. This is a response to repressed emotion. Repressed emotions go into your body if you don't deal with them, right? So that's why they're being horrible to you, okay? Because someone or something or some event was horrible to them, and they don't know how to process that, yeah? So they're trying to live it again in order to understand it, in order to forgive themselves, in order to maybe just in the brief moment when they are bullying you, feel normal. Yeah? Feel a brief sense of control, just maybe feel as though they can forget the sense of shame. There's basically a relief. Yeah, it's a self-soothing mechanism by a bully, and it's based around their toxic sense of their own self. Okay, so I hope that explains why a bully is a bully. Maybe that in itself could be sufficient for you to deal with your bully, okay? Because the reason bullying works is through fear and through power. Now, unfortunately, it might be the case. So there are some bullies who really have power, yeah? They don't feel the sense of power, they feel fear, they feel shame, but they still really do have power, okay? This might be the office manager or something like that. So they are manipulating through their position, but also because of their sense of fear. Or it might be that the bully actually has no power whatsoever, that they're just yelling and screaming in order to create a sense of fear where they are the top dog, the one who shouts loudest. I don't know if you've seen these, there are some videos on YouTube where you can watch people and they whack 40 or 50 metronomes on a table, and it's completely random, and they're all going tick, 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 randomly. Within 2 minutes, they're all in sync, right? We do that. Our minds, our bodies, our heart rate, all of our sensitivity connects with other people. So the sheer fact that you understand what is going on in the head or the gut of the bully kind of shines out from you, okay? Remember, the reason that they're doing this is to feel temporarily normal. When you name it, you ruin everything about their coping mechanism. It can't work. In fact, it makes their pain worse, right? You're telling them, I see straight through you. I know exactly what you're doing. I know why you're doing it, okay? And I am never going to be your solution, yeah? And you can get very, very specific on that. So the idea is by pushing back on what is a very, very fragile facade of power, that bully's power crumbles in a second because it's fear-based, okay? The whole purpose of being a bully is to hide their vulnerability. It's to hide the shame that they feel inside, to rub it away, scrub it away for a brief split second and feel normal. So if you actually name it in their face, if you tell them exactly what they are, oh my God, they're not going to do it again because it's making their problem worse, right? The way that a bully is hoping this is going to work is that he's going or she's going to watch you incorporate their shame. Okay? What they're wanting to do is to understand how they ended up feeling so bad. They can't do this verbally, they can't do this consciously because it's too scary. And so they're doing it to somebody else to watch what happens in order to try and understand themselves, in order to throw away that ugly, awful historical baggage and put it where it belongs. If you find that you are coping with a bully, that you're dealing with their messages, that you're finding ways to adapt yourself, yeah? You're starting to notice patterns, starting to anticipate how to mitigate the risk, and so you are changing yourself in order to manage the bully's bullying. You are integrating their problem. You're learning the patterns and understanding how to avoid it by changing yourself. That's great for the bully. It's helping them understand what's going on, but it's extremely problematic for you because what you're doing is you're learning patterns which come from outside of yourself, coming to conclusions, which then, just like when you're driving in a car and you learn how to drive a car and it gets to the point where you just habituate that and you hand it over to your subconscious and it just runs on autopilot, the same thing happens with these pattern matching fixed ideas. They get embedded in the back of our mind, and then whenever the possibility comes up in the future, it gets triggered and we run on autopilot. So you can find yourself limiting yourself because of these experiences that have come from outside of you, which you have no control over, okay? But that you learn ways of mitigating the risk by thinking that it's your fault, okay? So look at this. Right? So when I was at school, oh my God, was that an easy target? Right? Now, this is not something I can fix. I guess I could do plastic surgery, but when I was a teenager, when I was in primary school, this was not in my head. I thought I was fundamentally broken. I thought there was a problem with me that was going to be with me for the rest of my life, that intrinsically I was wrong, right? I was faulty. When you become bullied, right, you look inside of yourself for the reasons you're being bullied, right? You think it's your fault. There must be something about you which means that you are the one being picked upon, right? Why is it nobody else that's being picked upon? Why is it me? So for me, it was my nose, right? Of course, it wasn't my nose. It's just a target, right? But the point is, we try desperately to solve problems ourselves. And so if you think to yourself, oh, well, it's because I'm too thin, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I talk too much, I don't talk enough, it's because I'm an extrovert, it's because I'm an introvert, it's because my nose is crooked, whatever it may be, you feel as though if you try hard enough, you might be able to fix it yourself and then the bullying will stop, the pain will stop. You learn to make yourself small to avoid the risk that people are going to be able to laugh and humiliate you, yeah? The bully's desperate need to integrate something pollutes person after person after person. We all become hurt, yeah? And we learn the coping mechanisms for that hurt. And then, presumably, because we have our own shame-based story, which we don't dare express, we then go and do it to other people in order to understand. And they go and do it to other people, and it just percolates. That's why it's important to understand why this is the mechanism, yeah? Our innate way of healing can inadvertently cause ripples, the butterfly flaps its wings sort of approach. It can teach you lessons about yourself that you think are true. They're not true, absolutely not true, but they're interpretations that are done under a state of duress where it feels as though you must try to do whatever you can to protect yourself, to stop yourself from hurting. And if for whatever reason, inexplicably, the bully goes away, you might learn from that, and that then becomes a coping mechanism for future problems. Whereas in actual fact, that's not how these things work, okay? It's just that our brain is such a brilliant pattern matching mechanism. It might think, look how that worked. And then you start repeating it in the future. I hope that's helpful, yeah? The way that you stop a bully is by confronting and naming, because that kills the reason for the bullying. Then you need to go inside yourself and understand the learning mechanisms, the stories that have been impregnated inside of you, that came from outside of you, that are completely and utterly untrue, but that you found you're living your life by, right? Because these create rules, policies. We're not even aware that they're running. That's the problem. They just kind of run on autopilot. So it's very important that you can find a better way to process that, and eventually to forgive yourself of things that actually you don't need to forgive yourself about, but that you think you do, right? You think you're bad. One dead easy way that you can do this, okay? Just consider all the times in your life when you've been really, really sure of something and you've been dead wrong, right? Completely and utterly mistaken, yeah? Transfer that to these habits. Just consider the possibility that the conclusion you've come to is dead wrong. Have you heard this phrase, when you assume, you make an ass out of you and me? ASSUME, yeah? When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. Don't assume, right? It's another way of like bypassing the thought process. You just assume based upon previous experience, cause, effect. Doesn't make it correct, right? It's just a rule of thumb. It's a way of bypassing a lot of thought, but it's not correct. There's nothing wrong with what is going on inside of us, inside of you. I don't even know you, but I'm really, really convinced that the stories, the coping mechanisms that you have learned that have driven your perceived reality, if it's coming from a bully, it's simply not true. It creates a sense of shame, which is absolutely not true. Okay? If that resonates, write down in the comments below. I would love to hear. It's probable that I've missed things out, okay? This is just what I've learned and what I've experienced and what I understand. If you've got questions, ask questions. If there are other aspects of it that you would like me to address, write it down below. I'll be really, really grateful, because this is an extremely, extremely painful and powerful issue. And the more we can name it and express it, the less power it has. All right, thanks for watching. Take care and enjoy life. That's the story eventually. All right, take care. Bye. Which is absolutely not true.